and welcome to Watching the Tudors. I'm Heather.
And I'm Jonathan.
And this is the podcast where we watch the Tudors and go into the depth of the history and background of the show, explaining the stories behind the story. Learn more about the show and about us at watchingthetudors.com. This is episode 6, True Love. A quick reminder that if you like the show and want to see more of it, please give us a rating on iTunes. It's the number one way you can help a show succeed because it helps other people find the program. So we're going to do this the way we normally do. I will give a brief recap, and then Jonathan, who is new to the whole 16th century world, is going to ask questions, and we'll have a little bit of a discussion about what life was really like for these folks. Just a spoiler alert, this whole series assumes that you've watched the episode or you are rewatching it with us. So if you haven't, please note that we're going to be talking about everything that happened. So, spoiler alert.
Yeah, and also, like, bigger spoiler alerts, we assume you have a general working knowledge of this time period, like knowing that Henry VIII had many wives and things like that. So,
yeah, because we're going to talk about stuff that happened in the future.
Sorry if I gave that away, but yeah, Henry was married a few times. There's a song about it and stuff.
I'm Henry VIII, I am. Henry VIII, I am. So, also, hey, apologies for missing a couple of weeks there. Thank you for those people who tweeted and posted and asked us when we were going to have a fresh episode. We had a sick Hannah Bear and visitors and stuff like that. So we'll try and stay on better schedule. Thank you for keeping us on that.
Yeah, we missed you.
Yeah, we did. So, and you missed the Tudors.
I did.
So this is episode 6, True Love. And basically this episode is all about Henry and Anne totally falling in love. Anne is becoming a shadow queen. Catherine's being even more sidelined. Wolsey seems unable to produce Henry's longed-for divorce. Wolsey's enemies are plotting against him. They pull Charles Brandon back in court in order to help undermine Wolsey's position. And Anne and Catherine have a couple of confrontations. Catherine tells her that she knows all about the affair. She calls Anne a whore. She says she will always have Henry's heart. And Anne takes it in her stride. She keeps her head held high. Wolsey goes to Paris. He negotiates a treaty with the French against the Spanish. He also convenes a conclave of cardinals. He believes that this conclave is going to give him the authority to handle the matters like Henry's divorce that the Pope can't handle because he is still a prisoner in Spain. Then the Pope escapes, and so the cardinals don't give him the power that he wants, and he has to return to England empty-handed. So let's jump right into the questions.
My turn.
Your turn.
Or whatever. Our turn. Okay, so it starts out, and they're talking about the Pope situation. So the Pope, I think we talked about this last episode, but the Pope really was a prisoner.
Yes.
Of the Emperor.
Yes.
He was the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire.
During the sack of Rome, he was taken prisoner, and he was kept in a castle, and
why? Just to keep track of him? I mean,
well, he would have been a really great hostage.
Okay, so just a bargaining chip. I mean, they weren't going to, okay.
And also, I think Charles made a lot of noises about how he felt really bad that he couldn't control his troops. Because what all happened was these German mercenaries went in and totally sacked Rome. And so I'm not sure that Charles actually wanted it to happen. But at the same time, that also might have been him kind of equivocating as later on, Elizabeth I would pretend that she knew nothing of that. She didn't really sanction Mary Queen of Scots' death, even though she did. It was kind of like this, what's it called in legal terms? When you want to...
plausible deniability?
Exactly, yeah. So it might have also been that, because he really did
maybe
make a good
you might want to
bargain.
do this, but don't tell me how it happened, so...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, interesting. Henry, yes, was really into Anne.
Yes.
It seems.
He really
this was really a thing. Like,
oh,
he was
God,
really,
yes.
All right. I mean,
he was really into her.
I've heard you and other people talk about their love affair and stuff, but it's just, I don't know. It's surprising to me still.
I think it's surprising to a lot of people still. She just had this power over him until she didn't.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I even wrote this down, like, what was it? Like, was it just that she was playing hard to get? Was it that mixed with, like, who she was? Like,
Yeah, no, I mean, she was raised at the French court, and with Margaret of Austria, she was extremely cultured. People thought that French people were, you know, much more cultured than English. That was like the style of the times, and it wasn't really common for people to go to the French court. So, you know, she was exotic.
She was sort of a rare thing already, like an English person who was
and also the court itself was, you know, licentious and really liberal. And also, like, when she was raised with Margaret of Austria, she had access to, like, feminist writings, and she was really smart. She, like, was really well read in ways that women weren't so much at that time.
She was like her own woman and not just some thing.
Yeah.
I see.
And she apparently had eyes, really amazing eyes. She wasn't the most beautiful at all, but
her eyes were special.
Yeah.
And then her dad and Norfolk guy are trying to tell her, like, what to do, and she did not seem very happy about it.
No.
Like, did she dislike being a pawn, or was it that she just really loved Henry, and so it was like, or kind of a mixture of both?
I think it was kind of a mixture of both. I think that she didn't like being a pawn, and I think she was probably developing feelings
like
for Henry
for
this time.
Yeah.
And also, like, seeing that, you know, the way she was playing it, she might actually wind up becoming queen. And she was like, you know, I'm going to be...
It's a bigger game than what these guys are playing, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like, it's about more than just taking down Wolsey. It's about, like, I might actually be queen.
Yeah. And that's a bigger story than Wolsey.
Yeah, exactly.
I think about Wolsey, and she's... Yeah. Henry was wearing some crazy outfits in this episode. Like, are those an accurate depiction of royal outfits? I know you aren't a fashion historian.
No, I think so. And also, so there's a couple of things. One is last year, my other podcast, the Renaissance English History podcast, I did an episode on fashion. And there were all these laws on they were sumptuary laws to keep the classes in order. So you could only wear certain colors if you were of a certain nobility or rank.
Sumptuary is like play your part? Or
yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah. And
also licentious?
I don't know about that.
You use that word.
Licentious.
What's that?
Oh, it's like they had a lot of sex.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they were promiscuous.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just, this is, you know, us people who aren't into history also don't have large vocabularies. So just, you know, for any viewers out there.
Yeah.
Listeners.
And so I did that. And then also, if people have not watched the wonderful series, The Private Lives of the Tudors, that Tracy Borman did, it was on in the UK on the Yesterday channel, and I think you can still watch it on demand if you have access to UK television. And I'm not advocating a VPN here, but you can Google how to get access to UK television. Google will tell you, not me. So anyway, The Private Lives of the Tudors. There was this really great scene.
Plausible deniability.
Plausibility, yes. There was this really great scene where they found this hat that had belonged to Henry. They have very few items of clothing that were actually his because it was so expensive. Those kinds of materials, they would constantly be reused and turned into different things.
Or if you found it, you wouldn't put it in your closet 500 years later.
Yeah, so they have very few items that were actually his, but one thing they do have is a hat. And it is this bright red, like fedora,
like crazy looking hat. Yeah.
Oh my! And it's like bright red.
Yeah.
It's like cardinal, like hot.
You wouldn't imagine.
It was just bright red, and him with his red hair and stuff like that too. It was like talking about.
He had red hair.
Yeah, like kind of reddish.
Well, yeah, reddish.
So yeah. Anyway, there was some pretty outlandish clothing, and it was all in an attempt to look even more grand and show off how wealthy you were, that you could wear all of. Henry loved to wear jewels all over himself, to like just drape himself and have them sewn into his clothes to show how rich he was. And so yeah, he liked to wear some outlandish things.
Okay, and then they were talking about going to France, and Henry said, I'd like to send Thomas Wyatt as a special envoy or whatever.
He wanted to be included, yeah.
And he just wanted to get him out of town.
Yeah.
All right.
Because he had been
Yeah,
exactly.
All right. And Woolsey said something to Anne. Like, what did he?
He called her a silly girl.
Yeah. Like, did they have a weird relationship? Or?
Well, yeah. So Anne had been pre-contracted to marry a guy called Henry Percy, that was kind of a nobleman, and Wolsey had ixnayed the marriage. Like, this was before Anne was, and I think it was just a routine thing that he said no. Yeah, and when you were that high, Henry Percy was a higher noble person, and when you were that high in rank, like, the king kind of could control your marriage a lot more and stuff.
Yeah.
And so Wolsey said no, he can't marry this lowly born, because her father's just a diplomat or a merchant or whatever he was, and so, like, she can't do that. And so Anne had a beef against him for that. And but I don't know that Wolsey would have even remembered.
Yeah.
Because it was probably just a piece of paperwork.
Yeah, a long time
I don't
ago.
remember paperwork from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know that he remembered it, but he just kind of saw all these girls who threw themselves at Henry as being.
It was just another one.
Yeah.
And she's just, so it wasn't anything personal per
No,
se.
but for Anne it was. And
Yeah. But for him, it was just some other girl. All right.
An interesting fun fact is that later, when we see Wolsey being arrested, in real life, the person that actually in the movie or in the show, it shows him apparently with like a whole army practically comes in, but in real life, it was Henry Percy that arrested him. So it was, and I think Henry Percy really loved Anne. So
it gets deep.
It's deep. Shit gets real deep.
And I guess from later, like, it seemed like he was surprised when he found the letters or what. Like, he didn't know about Anne.
I don't know that he knew, and I think all of that. I mean, by this point, I think the whole court probably knew, and I think I think that maybe part of this was dramatic license to show his fall, like to show that he was being sidelined.
Just one more thing, like, he didn't know about, and it was like, oh no.
But
like, it's interesting because the first few shows. It was like he was the one who knew everything. Yeah. And now it's like he's sort of like, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Oh, this didn't work. Oh, I didn't even know about this.
Yeah. And I think that he probably would have. Yeah. He probably would have known, but he would have known that Henry and Anne were doing by this point, because I think this is set like 2 or 3 years into their affair. But he might not have known the seriousness that Henry really wanted to.
That he was writing to the Pope and stuff.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, or you're another girl he's sleeping with or something.
Yeah.
Did, like, Anne and Henry, did they really see each other?
Yes.
Like, so she was just...
By this point, she kind of set up like a shadow court as well.
So she was really getting ready. She was moving in.
She was moving in.
And how old were they, Henry and Anne, at this point?
He was about 35 and she was about 25.
So like,
and he was getting close to 40, but he was born in 1491 and she was born, nobody knows exactly, they kind of guess around 1501. So by this point, she was getting close to 30, 28, 29.
About 10 years different.
Yeah.
That's not horrible. That's not that bad.
It doesn't become bad until later when Henry's in his 50s and marries a teenager.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, or late 40s, early 50s. I forget the difference between him and Catherine Howard. It was pretty bad.
And in the show, she seems outspoken.
Yeah, she was.
Okay, so she really was outspoken. And Henry, did he like that? Like, did he...
Yeah. I mean, he was like the king and nobody ever talked. Think of how exciting that would be.
So kind of have someone, like, tell you what's actually going on.
Yeah, his whole life, nobody ever told him what was...
I feel like that's, like, the worst... totally sidetracking for 30 seconds. But I feel like that's the problem with, like, rich people or celebrities or something, like, that lose their mind. Like, they go, Britney Spears and Justin Bieber's. Like, they just have, like, everyone, everywhere, all the time, just says yes and tells them what they want to hear or what they think they want to hear. Like, they aren't even listening to the words they're saying. Like, they just think what do I say? Like, what do I do to make this person like me? And,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be nice.
Yeah.
And to have it be a pretty girl.
Yeah,
who's
who
telling
was
you
smart.
what's going on.
Yeah. And, you know, she was, again, that's part of having been raised at the court of Margaret of Austria and with all these this strong woman figure. She told him stuff and he liked it.
Nice.
She kind of put him in her. And you see, the thing is, the problem for her, as we will see in later seasons, that works great as a mistress. It doesn't work well.
When you're being chased, yeah.
Yeah, but when you're a wife, especially the wife of a king, yeah. The queen's job was...
That's the girlfriend's place, is to be all outspoken and wild.
Yeah. The queen's job is to be quiet and make sons.
And to make babies.
Yeah.
And then the queen, like, she really knew about... Catherine really knew about... that he wanted a divorce, like, in real life. That's a real... Okay. And then we're back with the Thomas Tallis gay love affair.
Yeah, we've already talked about that.
I know. You don't like it. And it's still fake.
Yeah, it's... And Thomas Tallis wasn't even at court at this time, so it just needs to stop.
And then, so what was the conversation with Wolsey and Moore about? Like, I didn't really...
Wolsey was telling Moore that he was going to Paris and he thought this conclave of cardinals was going to give him the right to adjudicate. And Moore said, then you're going to be basically as powerful as the Pope. And I think, like, Wolsey said, well, are you going to abide by what they decide? And I think Moore said that he didn't think he would. And
so I guess what I'm kind of confused about is Moore. Like, I get Wolsey. Like, I know what he's trying to do, and I know what he's doing and stuff. But, like, Moore, like, where is his allegiance? Like,
to God?
Like, just to the rules, kind of, with him.
Yeah.
I mean, just kind of like, well, God's, and the Pope's supposed to be this, and God said this, and okay.
Thomas More was really into, like, order and, things following. And he was in support of reform, but, slowly and orderly reform. Yeah, exactly.
Not like a revolution or something. But.
And, he's going to be killed because he never accepted Anne as queen. Like, he stuck with it. He's serious. He seriously said he wouldn't take the oath, and...
That's what's respectable, honorable. Yeah. I mean, I like someone of principle.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, so he was just, I think, this is like
Poor
shadowing...
Thomas More. Jeez, it's like everyone dies.
Yeah,
well, I mean, I guess it's...
It's interesting because...
Spoiler alert, everyone dies.
There's been a kind of recent... surge in interest of Thomas More because he was portrayed really badly in Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall. And he did burn some Protestants. I think we talked about this in an earlier episode. But, I think he tried to be fair about his burning of Protestants. And we talked about
and he probably felt a little bad.
Yeah. I don't think he did. No, I don't think he did because he really truly believed he was... if you have a cancer...
I get it.
You have to cut it out.
I get it. Ugh.
And heretics were cancer.
Yeah. So, Wolsey and Moore.
Yes.
Did they not like each other? Or it was just this on this topic? Or, I mean, they probably just kind of had a working relationship.
Yeah, they weren't
it's not like they're all buddies or something.
I think at first, Moore would have looked up to Wolsey because he was a... Cardinal
stuff. Yeah.
But I think at this point he was starting
after getting to know him and being like, gosh, you don't follow the rules.
See, this is all just like politics and whatnot. Yeah.
So, was Anne, Anne seems to be talking with her brother a lot.
Yeah. Was
she really close? I mean, was she close to her brother in reality?
Yeah, and later they were so close that they were accused of having incestual relationships with each other.
I remember you said that. Oh no, it was that other show we were watching. Just to tell the listeners, I'm starting to get into history to the point where when dear Heather is watching other history programs.
The BBC One series, The Six Wives right now.
Okay, so the BBC One series, The Six Wives. Instead of finding something else to do in another part of the house.
You sat down and watched it with me.
And yeah, I think I was looking at something else, but I was listening.
Yeah,
intently.
so you're all kind of confused right now.
I am confused because I know all these like details about the future, and I just gotta say, my what do you call it? I'm biased. I came into this unbiased, like I don't know who these people are, and keeping an open mind. I'm growing to dislike Henry very much. I really don't like him.
Fair enough.
But it's cool. We're rolling with it, and he's the star of the show. And, but just as a person and a historical figure, not a big fan.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of it can be chalked up to that's kind of how things were, kind of like holding it against Thomas More that he burned Protestants, but that's just what people did.
The killing of a queen, it was the first time a queen was ever killed when he killed Anne Boleyn, and it shocked.
And just the thing, like, this will probably never come up in this show, I don't know, but like the fact that Henry never let Catherine see her daughter Mary again.
It'll come up later in the season.
It just, what a jerk.
Well,
I mean, I get it. That's how things were.
No, and also, like at the time, the children were raised separately anyway, and it was definitely punitive. I think
not
he
going to
was.
Change my.
No, I'm not trying to, but I think that he was really, really upset because something later on when we see his relationship with Anne of Cleves, when you accepted his will, he was willing to be very, very generous. So, like, when he wanted a divorce from Anne of Cleves because she was ugly and smelled, supposedly, nobody mentioned it before the marriage. And even when she was at Calais waiting to come over, everybody wrote about how beautiful she was. But then Henry saw her and suddenly she smelled and was ugly.
This dog.
So, so he said that he wanted a divorce from her. And she, of course, was petrified because she knew what had happened.
Yeah.
And she just went along with it and was like, okay. Well, she made out like a bandit. She was the highest ranking. She officially got the title of the king's sister. She was the highest ranking woman at court below his daughters and the queen. I think actually she was equal to his daughter. Yeah. And she got so much money. She got houses. She got like 3 or 4 houses.
She could probably marry whoever she wanted, or whatever.
All kinds of stuff. And so the thing is, if you were willing to go, like, I think if Catherine would have said, okay, I get what you're saying.
I'll go along with all this.
And also, she's like, I'm in menopause. I'm not going to have a son. Like, let me just go to a nunnery and be with God all day. That's fine. But she was really concerned about her daughter's rights. If she would have admitted that the marriage wasn't legal or whatever, wasn't valid, then her daughter would have lost her place in the succession as well. And so she was looking out for that. And I think she truly didn't understand what the big deal was, why her daughter couldn't inherit. So she was very stubborn, Catherine was. And I think by this point, years in, Henry was just like, what the hell? Like,
he's tired of this.
Yeah. And if he could keep pushing buttons to try to...
And it didn't matter to him. He was just like telling someone to write something down and
exactly.
Sending it off.
But it is interesting with Anne of Cleves. He was so willing to be so generous if you went along with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're back in France in the show.
Yes.
And the king's son, once again, is betrothed. Is going to be married to Mary.
Yes.
Apparently.
Yes.
It's crazy. I mean, it's because that was at the cloth. What is it?
The Field of the Cloth of Gold. Yeah.
Yeah, and they met, and now they're again.
Yep.
Just the rotating door of people.
And he only had one daughter, right? So he had to...
I know, really...
milk it for what he could.
Move her around.
It would have been different if he had like 6 children. He could have just, but with one, it was hard.
Slowly. And do you think... So there was a scene with Anne and the Queen and Catherine having a really awkward, like, uncomfortable talk.
Yeah.
I mean, is it your guess that they would have that kind of weird talk?
I'm sure they had weird run-ins because Anne was still serving Catherine. So I'm sure that they had weird run-ins. It would be weird if they didn't. But at the same time, I don't think Catherine's whole thing was... She was the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella.
Yeah, I don't think she's going to be talking...
No. She's not going to lower herself to that. She's a queen. She's the daughter of warriors. She's not going to lower herself to talk to this woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then... Now the Pope.
The Pope.
He escaped.
he did escape.
Like he really is, like this is a real thing?
No, he really did
escape. It just
escape.
sounds so funny.
He bought off...
The Pope on the run.
Yeah, no, he bought off some officers that were guarding him, and he disguised himself as a peddler, and he got out of the castle where he was being held.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
That is a witty Pope.
Yeah, and he made it back to Rome. It was like a year and a half after the sacking.
What a trip. I just can't imagine being this renegade runaway Pope. Like,
sounds like a book.
Disguised. I know.
It sounds like a comic, like a Carl Hiaasen book, The Runaway Pope. If Carl Hiaasen ever...
funny story. You got to pitch it to... I want a percentage, though. Yeah. Okay, so the Pope was really on the run.
Yes.
And then Henry is asking for someone he can trust to send a note.
Yes. And Anne says this Dr. Knight, who used to be her tutor.
Yeah.
So I want to put this out to listeners. I can't find anything on this Dr. Knight fellow. And I also don't think that Anne would have had to... Anne was raised in France and Burgundy, and I don't know that she would have had a tutor. Mm-hmm. So if any listeners know if this Dr. Knight is real, I'm leaning towards no, because I just can't find anything on him anywhere. But I would love to hear from people if they know that he's real or not.
And I'll take theories. I mean, Heather might want, some facts. If you got any theories on this Dr. Knight
fellow,
or even I thought it was Dr. White. So if you have any theories on Dr. Knight or Dr. White,
and I've even scoured like the Tudors wikis and all the different fact-checking Tudors blogs and stuff that there are, and I can't find anything on him. No. So I'm leaning towards that he didn't exist,
and I'm leaning that way too, because that's what she says. She's the expert in this area. Right. So
okay.
All right, but did he really? So we're not sure about the messenger, but did he did really write to the Pope about this?
Yeah, in 1530. So the Vatican actually in 2009 released his letter.
God, it's so crazy this stuff exists.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. This is amazing. We have this stuff.
Yeah. So the Vatican has the letter, and it was basically, it wasn't a plea asking for the annulment. It was basically a request that he would hurry his decision along. Because by this point, Clement's back in Rome. So this is like 2 years after. And so he's back in Rome, but he doesn't want to piss off Charles. And Charles is Catherine's nephew. He's like, I don't want to be
I've done that once.
Right. So he was like trying every kind of like deal he could to stall the heck out of it and all this kind of stuff. And so Henry wrote him a letter begging him to like move things along a little bit, keep things going. And so that letter still exists. And I guess the Vatican sold 199 facsimiles of the document, accompanied by related scholarly texts, for $68,000 each.
When?
In 2009.
Wow.
So if you want to own a facsimile...
God, the Vatican's like just a money-making machine, huh?
I guess.
Wow.
Yeah, and also the letter...
Or the center of God on earth.
Right, depending on your religion.
On who... on what empire conquered the world you live in.
The letter actually, interestingly, also includes 85 seals and signatures of the peers of England in solidarity with the king.
I just love it. Like they care.
Right?
I'm just imagining like them, someone showing up at the door. Yes, I am here for the Duke of Westerbury. The king has requested that you stamp and seal this letter to the Pope about him getting a divorce, and just saying, God, this crap again?
Right.
Just whatever. Yeah, I'm signing it. I don't want to get my head chopped off. Like, are you kidding me? Like, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, here's my seal and stamp.
There you go.
All right. And Henry seemed really upset with Brandon. Like, this is he's still like angry.
Yeah.
Like,
he was really pissed off.
Yeah.
And they had to pay huge fines, and he was really pissed off.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him. Like, he had so few marriage like we just said with Mary, he only had
No,
one.
I do. I mean, I can almost get it. It's almost like he wasn't so mad at, like, Brandon. It's like what he was mad at. It's like, you're messing up what I'm trying to... You're messing up my deal here.
Yeah.
It's not so much like, how could you go against me? It's not so much like, don't you know who I am?
Right.
It's more just like, come on, dude, like...
Work with me a little bit
There's
here.
only 2 women...
That I can marry off.
Yeah, we won't go through the names because it's all confusing. But the one's married off to the one already in
Scotland. Yes.
And so I only have my daughter and my other sister, and that's it. Like, we're working with 2 people here.
Yeah,
and
no
you
boys,
go and marry
just
one.
2 girls.
Like, you go and I can't kill you.
Right.
And now she's married, so she ain't gonna.
And you're
she's
young,
no good.
so you're not going to die anytime soon.
It's just, dude, I can see.
And also, the other thing with this is her children are going to have a claim to the throne. So she married this guy who was a new man, right? Didn't come from old nobility. His father was, Henry VII's standard bearer or whatever. Yeah. So it's possible that his
this dude
nephew
worked himself into the
throne, right?
Kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd be pissed off too.
Yeah, I can see that. And do you have any? Do we know? Like, did Brandon and
Margaret?
I guess in the show it's
Mary. Yeah, it's Margaret. Yeah,
but in real life it
was Mary. Yes.
So the woman in question.
Yes.
Like, did they really love each other? Was this? I mean, was it just like a plan by him?
I think they really loved each other.
They really seemed to get down. Okay. Yeah.
And they lived a very quiet life away from court, and they seemed...
They didn't have much choice.
Yeah, no, but they seemed pretty happy.
They did. It wasn't like they got divorced now that they didn't have money and stuff.
Then later on, I think Mary/Margaret stayed away from court because she supported Catherine and all of that. And so,
And...
Which put Charles Brandon in an awkward position.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I know it's not like there are particularly records of this, but like Anne would go like hunting with him. I mean, she would just kind of be around,
hanging out,
and like just reminds me of like an annoying girlfriend who's like, no offense to girlfriends out there, but just like the one, or like the band, like the Yoko Ono, like she just seems like, all right, we're all here and your girlfriend, and like we're hunting, and you brought your girlfriend hunting.
Yeah.
Like, seriously?
Yeah.
Dude.
No, I mean, Henry was just besotted.
Yeah. She's just all about her.
Yeah.
What was Wolsey doing in France?
He was trying to get that... Well, he was negotiating a treaty.
He was doing all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, he was negotiating a treaty with...
The king
of friendship.
France, against... Spain.
Well, in theory, I think they were just agreeing to be friends with each other, which then by definition would mean they hated Spain. Yeah. And then he also was trying to get this conclave of...
AKA, we actually meant our first treaty that we completely turned our back on, like, right after we signed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're here like, just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh.
And he was trying to get those cardinals together.
When in doubt, war with
France. I'm going to do a series on war with France this coming January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he mentioned peace with the emperor. Wolsey did. Why did Wolsey want peace all the time?
I think Wolsey was tired of money going towards all these stupid wars that he's like you.
That people were just changing it. Yeah. Like, why? Like,
he's like, let's just be friends.
Yeah, let's just be friends and build some cool universities.
I think it would have helped him in the...
have a World Cup.
I think it would have helped him in the being seen as a potential candidate for a pope.
Oh, it's like a peacemaker. Yeah. Because, like, theoretically, the church is against war.
Theoretically, yeah.
That's a good one.
Hardy.
So, with scenes like that... Gosh, I was really put off by that scene.
Which scene?
And my question is, like, would this kind of thing actually happen?
Okay.
Where, like, Henry just totally, like, spits in the Queen's face.
Yeah.
Like, she came in, like, they were like, oh, now the Queen. And he's like, everyone must hang on while I talk to Anne.
Yeah.
And Oh, like that. I mean, he would do things.
He did
like,
stuff that was really disrespectful to her.
It's atrocious.
Yeah. I don't know that he ever, so one thing about him is until close to the end, he made a very public display of saying that he really wished he could still be married to her, but it was his conscience that was keeping him from it. So, and that was because when he still thought he had hope from the Pope.
Yeah, I know.
He wanted it to look like, it was really his gut telling him, but he really wished, and he would say, I want nothing more than to be able to have you be my wife, and I love you more than anybody, but blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And so, but then there was a turning point when he started really getting frustrated, and that was like when he
didn't even care anymore.
Yeah, and that was when he basically, dumped,
said, screw you.
Yeah, and there was and he moved Anne into the palaces and gave her her own ladies in waiting.
She's
and
the
all
daughter of Isabel and Ferdinand.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, she's like, yeah.
What a.
Yeah.
Not a big fan. All right. Wolsey. Was Wolsey really taking money? I guess we don't have the accounting.
The
notes,
accounting,
but
I would guess that he was. It was kind of a perk of those kinds of jobs.
Mm-hmm. And did Henry? I guess this was something we might know. Like, did Henry really find out and get upset? I mean, is this anywhere does it write down Henry's grievances of Wolsey or something?
I think that just when he was finally arrested, they talked about how he had stopped being able to be a good servant. And the thing is, basically, as long as Wolsey got the king what he wanted, I don't think the king really cared. You don't even think
he cared?
No, he was like, whatever.
He had enough to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you do what you like. If I get what I want, you get what you want, and everyone's happy.
No big deal, right?
That makes sense. I mean, that makes a lot more sense than.
Yeah. So then, by this point, if he was starting to doubt him, he would have seen stuff like that in a different light.
Mm-hmm. And so you actually already answered this question, or what you thought. Anne was cleaning Catherine's feet, and then she saw the necklace that Henry gave her, and it was uncomfortable and weird. And so our guess is that kind of scene probably would not have happened.
The daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella would not have stooped so low as to make it at all show that she was upset or that. And also, that would make her equal.
Even more than that, I just feel like when they're like, "Hey, who do you want to wash your feet tonight?" she'd say Kathy instead of Anne.
Yeah. Well, she might make Anne just to show her who's
stick her
boss.
Smelly feet in her face.
Exactly, but I don't think that she would have then proceeded to call her a whore.
Yeah.
She would have just been like, "Thank you for you've washed my feet. Great, you may go.
She go on your way, peasant."
Exactly.
And then, so we already talked about Dr. Knight and our thoughts on him, so we won't need to go. Yeah, so I had written down, did Wolsey actually find him and divert him or what? But we don't know that he actually existed.
Yeah.
Henry and Anne's mom. Somewhere in there was something about Henry being with Anne's mom.
Yeah.
Is that like a rumor?
There were rumors of that, and then apparently later on, somebody said something about how he'd been with the mother and two daughters, and Henry kind of said, well, not really the mother, or, never the mother, or whatever. So, Henry kind of muttered that he hadn't been with the mother. Yeah. But there were rumors that he had. Okay. So, it's possible.
And I wouldn't put it past that Thomas Boleyn, hey, you can have my wife, too.
Yeah.
Jeez, that guy. She's like, here's my one daughter, here's my other daughter. Oh, you like boys? Here's my son. It's just like...
This was probably before they'd been married, when she was younger.
Oh.
I would guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't put anything past any of these folks.
Yeah. It's so funny because it's so, the court is just so different to,
real life?
Yeah, it's like with anything. It's like, the courts, the White House is different. But, any kind of the stuff you read in Us Weekly with celebrities and
scandalous stuff. Yeah, just on that other plane of living.
Yeah. Yeah.
The upper class live in a different way.
Not just the upper class, the 1%.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah. The upper class.
Yeah.
There's the royalty.
Yeah. Exactly. There's a whole different lifestyle going on there.
Indeed.
It's like the thing is, most people were worried about harvests, and most people were worried about the rains, and most people were worried about, sicknesses and all this kind of stuff. Although there were some things. I mean, I think it's like showing that Catherine's children died, shows that, and Anne would have miscarriages and stuff, show that, nobody was immune to this kind of things, stuff. But, I just imagine like the average person like worrying about their harvest or, the currency, like what their money was going to buy and all this kind of stuff. Henry was always doing weird things to the currency to try and beat inflation and cause inflation or whatever. He was always messing around with stuff, and things were always uneven. And I just think about, it's so easy for him to just say, okay, we're going to debase the currency. And then like the average person is like, well, shit, now I can't
eat. Like I literally can't eat.
Exactly.
Gosh. And this is in the times before like economic theories. And it's
funny because like the whole thing was that the value of the coin was like how much gold was in it, and then people would like melt it and then add in other kinds of like bronze or whatever, tin stuff that wasn't worth as much. And it's just funny because like can you imagine doing that now? Like, I mean, I guess that's what counterfeiters try to do, I suppose. But it was so common. So you'd get these coins that were like 90% tin. Yeah,
it's like it doesn't even look gold. No, it's just hold it up to the light.
Yeah.
To the light the right way. All right. So then Charles Brandon,
yes,
is back.
Brandon's back.
And he's groveling.
Yes, he groveled.
He really did grovel.
He groveled.
He said, "Please, sir, may I have my spot back?"
Yeah.
And then they arm wrestled.
Yeah.
I guess we don't have a picture of them arm wrestling, but this is something that would go on. Like people would arm wrestle.
Yep.
Like I don't know if that happens so much anymore. Maybe it does. Maybe this is something else that listeners can let us know.
If people arm wrestle.
Yeah. Do any of you out there solve your disputes by arm wrestling?
My dad and I used to arm wrestle.
Yeah, I've lived. I'm coming up on 38 now, and I don't know that I've ever been challenged like.
Didn't you arm wrestle in school, or just for fun?
No, yeah, we did, but it was never like, all right, who's going to get to decide this tonight, or who's going to get the girl, you or me? Let's arm wrestle.
Yeah, okay.
But I don't know. Yeah. And then there's also wrestling. It's like the king. Hey, French king,
let's wrestle.
Let's wrestle.
Yeah,
I love it. This is the side I like. I don't like all the...
There was a lot less, it's interesting because like we think about, like the way we think about our bodies and nudity and sex and all this kind of stuff is a product of things that would come later, like Puritans and...
Queen Victoria or something?
Yeah, although, it's interesting because pornography was at an all-time high in England during the reign of Victoria, which of course could be a reaction to it. But, all of these kinds of like our views now are a product of stuff that would come after.
So it's like a totally different scene.
Yeah. And, back then there wasn't any such thing as privacy for anybody, in especially the king, because he had people sleep at his feet all the time to make sure he was not going to be assassinated. And, most people didn't have space in their houses for privacy. And, so the idea of like not seeing people naked and I mean, certainly you would try to have you weren't going to go around naked just for fun.
I get it. Yeah.
It wasn't like this very kind of...
If there was someone else in the room, you weren't not going to have sex because you'd never have sex.
Right. And like back in the Middle Ages, like everybody slept in the Great Hall. Yeah. All the servants where the fireplace was. And so like everybody was doing everything then. And so, yeah, it's just interesting. The idea of like a king wrestling and stuff like that. Like also this is like when, kings led armies into battle. And so you had to like show that you were tough and you could lead your men into battle and you could be a leader. And so you'd arm wrestle too, Yep. Yeah.
So, it seems as if it's like very clearly defined now as being like two sides of the court. Really.
Yes.
Like Wolsey on the one side.
Yes.
And then seemingly everyone else on the other side.
Yeah.
But that's a like that's fair to say, I guess.
I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's other
I think
things
at this
going
point,
on.
Anne divided everybody, and Catherine later on would try to align herself with Wolsey. Because Catherine at one point didn't like Wolsey because remember he was going to take her daughter and all this kind of stuff. But they try to ally themselves.
Just to
try and each save each other's
together.
neck.
We can have some power in the world.
And so I think at this point, like Anne really was the dividing point for people.
And I guess I was just I was thinking about that were most of the characters are most of the characters in this show like a fairly accurate kind of depiction of them? And not that you personally knew them, but like it's like no one stands out. I mean, I guess the Thomas Tallis gay love affair thing is the only thing that stands out. It's like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe they're making this person do this or whatever. And it's not like,
No, I think. In some ways they're all kind of caricatures of themselves, but the caricatures have a basis in truth.
So in general, they're not completely like...
No, like Henry had a lot of warmth and depth to him, especially earlier. This picks up where the drama with Anne starts, and they miss out on the first 10, 12 years of his reign, which is a long time. And, they miss out on a lot of the stuff that he was passionate about then. And, they try and show him writing the Defender of the Faith piece and, try and show him. But I think he had a lot more depth than just this...
womanizer.
Who threw temper tantrums.
Random. Yeah.
Yeah. And... and the same thing with all these. I mean, you can't show the depth of a character in
an hour. I get it.
But I think that they're all kind of the caricatures with trying to put a bit more depth into them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I mean, these are people that are so fascinating. That even 500 years later, there's no shortage of books and blogs, and we're still studying them, and we're still learning new things about them, and doing.
We're here doing this, on a show that's wildly popular. Like, I mean, it's not.
And these people are just so they still fascinate us, and so I think it's
like they're still alive. It's interesting because I feel like. So many people, like their hopes in life could be that, if they live on, like if, I made a lasting impact in the world, or, if I'm in history books, not that everyone wants to aspire to be in history books, but I guess what's interesting to me is one might think, oh, well, I would have to, discover something like Marie Curie to live on.
Yeah.
Like, no, you just got to get wrapped up in
some crazy
drama. And just assert yourself in some way in that drama.
Yeah.
And then you'll live on forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it's
How
funny.
funny.
Yeah.
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 All right. And Zsa Zsa Gabor died today.
She did.
Or
yesterday.
Yeah. Just I remember her, the reason I think about it is because I remember asking my parents when I was young, who is she? And they said she's just famous for being famous. Like, she didn't even really. Like, I mean, I guess she was an actress, but she wasn't a famous actress. She was just famous for being Zsa Zsa Gabor and like slapping a policeman.
Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Like, she's done things. She's done more than wake up in the world, but.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Veering off track. Wyatt poetry about Anne. Like, that's, I think we talked about this 2 or 3 shows ago, but that's a real thing. Like, that there is existing poetry. That,
in theory, isn't inspired by Anne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say, and that's the thing, because he wasn't going to come out and say, like, Anne, I love you, because
he'd get his head chopped off.
His head next to him.
And he actually managed to escape the whole thing. So he was also accused with this group of like 5 people that they said had carnal relations with Anne. And he was sent to the Tower and all of it. And he managed to get himself not having his head chopped off.
He's a smooth talker.
Thomas
Wyatt.
And he probably did have some kind of relations with Anne, which is before she was married to, or, you know, well, we talked about that. Maybe he just had a crush on her from afar. But either way, he had feelings for her more than her brother George did in a romantic sort of way. Yeah. So if you were going to go after people, he, in theory, could have been one that you went after.
He was more guilty than other parties.
Guilty in thought, if not in deed.
Yes.
But, yes. And he managed to get out of it. So, yeah, he wasn't going to publish a bunch of poems and say, by the way, these are all to Anne because I love her.
Yeah, bad move.
Yeah.
And then the last question, I don't remember the final scene, but it just, Anne was there again, and it didn't seem like she needed to be there.
It was when she was wearing the little crown, and Wolsey came back, and she was standing at the fire, and Wolsey was saying, like, you know,
couldn't do it.
He couldn't do it, and he didn't want to say it in front of Anne to start with, because he wanted to wait for Anne to leave.
He's like, if you say anything you say in front of me.
Yeah. And then...
Like, she's just always around.
Yeah.
Gosh. I mean, if I would be really bothered if I was Wolsey. Like, you come back and it's like, what the hell's she doing here? I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to say until she leaves. It's like, no, she can hear it, and it'd just be like,
the hell she can.
Like, yeah, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the writing is on the wall
for Wolsey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also that Anne is coming into she will be part of this picture, whether the world seems to want to allow it or not. I am Henry Rex.
Henricus Rex. Yeah. There's actually a really short film. It's like 20 minutes right now. It's called I Am Henry. It's out on Vimeo, and it looks at Henry, like, kind of going into heaven and being met with all of the people that he had killed. It's really, when you said I Am Henry, it reminded me. It's a really interesting little short that's on Vimeo. Anyway.
So those are all my questions for the week or for the episode.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm trying to think about, like, greater themes. I think it's just, like, changes, right? Like, the Protestant Reformation is coming, and...
I think just that this Anne thing is in a passing phase.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think, like, in terms of greater societal changes. And I don't really see that much just between... I mean, I think the thing about, you know, that Henry and Anne... Like, Henry's going to have Anne and however he can, and that is going to usher in the Protestant Reformation for all of us.
Yeah. God, that changed stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that was like...
That's like a wrench... monkey wrench,
and that changed every, like, individual's lives.
Oh, I mean, all sorts of stuff.
Disillusion of the monasteries, and
because, like, I mean, gay people can get married now.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't in the Catholic Church, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, we don't really follow modern Catholicism.
I'm an Episcopalian.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the Pope. It's, like, crazy to me that there's still a Pope. Okay, that's like way off topic.
Okay, so thanks again for listening to the podcast. We hope you like it. Yeah. And again, you can get more information about us and the show at watchingthetudors.com. And I'm trying to make show notes for each episode. I'm just trying to figure out how to work it. But anyway, I'm trying to make show notes. So again, please leave us a rating on iTunes if you like the show as well. It makes a big difference. So thank you so much, and Merry Christmas. And we're going to try to be back next week with episode 7.
Yes. And just, you know, just to be all inclusive.
Happy Kwanzaa.
I don't think people actually celebrate Kwanzaa. Whatever you celebrate this time of year, I hope it's good.
Yeah.
Solstice, New Year's, whatever.
Diwali. All right. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, thank you. And I was just going to say, if you heard crackling in the background, we do have a fire going. So
yeah, we do.
That's what that noise is.
Nice. All right. Bye.
Bye.